Today, I am absolutely delighted to welcome Peter Roberts, who is Head of Distribution for IAG Cargo, to the Intuitive Insights podcast. Peter has had a career in aviation, and so I'm really interested in hearing his views and how they relate to the rest of the transport industry. Good morning, Peter Roberts, Head of Distribution for IAG Cargo. A very, very warm welcome to the Intuitive Insights podcast.
Morning. Thank you very much, Nina.
It's an absolute pleasure to welcome you, Peter. And I think you are officially our very first person who is coming from an aviation background. We've had lots and lots of guests on Intuitive Insights over the last 18 months who have come from a rail background. But it's important for us to be able to kind of learn from other sectors and find out what's happening elsewhere in the transport industry. So I'm absolutely delighted that you have agreed to come and join me on the virtual couch this morning for the podcast.
Well, thank you very much, and lovely to be here. IAG Cargo is one of those names that not many people know. Should I just briefly say, what it is and how it fits into transport? Because
that would be brilliant. That would be fantastic. I'm really keen to know what your current role is, and yes, as you say, that would be really interesting to kind of hear how IAG fits in. I'm interested to hear your own career story to date. And really interesting for me and our audience is why transport in the first place? What was that pull? So I'll hand over to you, Peter, and you can set the scene for us and then share your story, if you will.
Okay, great. Thank you. So, Head of Distribution for IAG Cargo. IAG Cargo is the cargo management arm for the 5 airlines inside IAG. So that's British Airways, Iberia, Aer Lingus, Vueling and Level. So we're a global group, and I specifically look after how we do digital distribution. So our digital sales arms on our own website, iagcargo.com, and through our API channels, which connect through to distribution platforms, sort of the train lines of the freight world. So that's what I do today. In terms of how did I get into transport and why transport, I think when I started out my career, I didn't really have a particularly clear view leaving university that transport was going to be the place for me. I had done a biochemistry degree with a sort of a major within that, focusing on some computer technology. So I pretty much applied to the FTSE 100 grad schemes on the computer grad schemes, and was lucky enough to get a role on the grad scheme at British Airways on their computer pathway. So I went into that thinking, this is my first step. I'll be here for a couple of years. I'll learn a bit about technology and industry, and then perhaps move on. And the thing about once you get into transport, whether you go there deliberately or you land there almost by happy accident, is it's such a fascinating industry, and it's so continually facing change and challenge and disruption that once you're in, the possibility of stepping out seems mad. So it's something that you fall in love with at the moment you're into it. So I guess a little bit about my career path, if you'd like.
Please, yeah, love to hear it.
So I joined British Airways on this computer grad scheme, and I started working on BA.com in its early years, and went through kind of the technical path where I was a junior developer, and then sort of a bit more senior and doing various bits and pieces on the BA.com platform, building out its selling capability. And I did that for a few years, and I really, really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the problem solving. I enjoyed the team that I worked with. But I kind of reached a point where I felt like I wasn't really going to be progressing or learning new things, particularly. I felt like I was sort of hitting the point where I really wanted to change and learn something new. So I switched across to the business side. So still looking on BA.com, but I took on product ownership of the Manage My Booking section. So if you've ever flown with BA and you've gone into choose a seat or help somebody select a wheelchair or any of those sorts of things, then you've touched something which probably still has a little bit of me left in it. And that was, I guess, the first time that I really started to understand the difference between solving a particular problem with technology and then owning a product. And there's a world of difference between just doing a project and owning a product. And with the Manage My Booking product at that time, it was slightly unloved, wasn't seen as particularly reliable, didn't really get the customer throughput that it deserved, because it was a really good piece of kit. But customers didn't trust it. And that's when I started to understand that having great functionality isn't enough. You also need to have reliability and usability. And the first thing I did is I sort of set about kind of fix the basics style project to understand what was blocking customers from using it, why they didn't trust it, and try and tackle those issues. And so that's what I did. I worked with some of my tech team, and I also spent quite a lot of time engaging directly with customers through a website called Flyer Talk, which is sort of a frequent flyer whinging forum, an information sharing forum. But it's a really fantastic place to get insight about what was going on and could get direct feedback when things weren't working, and when things were, and could see the difference. So I plugged away at that for a little while, and Managed My Booking moved from something that wasn't reliable but had great functionality to having the reliability and the functionality, and expanded it out on a few other big projects within that space, and then kind of reached the point where I was ready to move on to the next thing, and that's when I switched to the product side of BA, so product development side. The intention was that I'd be still kind of in that technical space, supporting some of the technology growth and that pathway. And then as things happen in careers and accidents happen, somebody went on maternity leave and I inherited their portfolio of airport product.
Right.
And I knew nothing about airport throughput. I knew nothing about what people liked, what they didn't like, the challenges of introducing change in a regulated environment. It's a unionized environment. It's partially outsourced in most places. So I kind of started on the same, okay, well, let's look at the reliability, functionality, and usability of this piece of the puzzle that I now own, and look for opportunities to make a difference where I could see a difference being made. And I started by listening to customers. I started looking at the data and walking around the airport myself. So I spent a lot of time going through security and then spending time in the airport watching people, just to understand it. Because once you understand it, then you can start doing stuff.
Yeah.
And one of the complaints that customers had was around premium boarding reliability. So if you've bought your business class ticket or you're an exec club member, at the time, you didn't always get the priority boarding experience that had been promised to you.
Okay.
And there were lots of reasons, and history kind of builds up reasons why things don't happen. There were lots of reasons why that wasn't in place on every flight. But I felt like those were reasons that could be challenged if we approached it in a new way. So it took a bit of persuading with some of my colleagues to say, okay, let's do a trial where we roll out premium boarding on every flight. And there were concerns about the OPEX impact, so the running cost impact, and would it have an extra staffing need? Would there be health and safety concerns about having new signage, that sort of thing? So I said, well, let's just trial it. So I got hold of an old sign and printed out a new premium boarding sign and literally lugged it around Terminal 5 with a clipboard to trial this thing. And it turned out that the customers were in the mindset to follow instruction going through the thing. And if there was a sign saying, please do this, they did it. So we were able to prove the trial was really successful. We could then expand that out first in T5 and then across the world, so that every time for every flight, there was that premium boarding signage was there, and it didn't change the number of people that were needed. It didn't change how long it took to board anything. It just meant that people felt like they were getting what had been promised, and nobody felt like they were having a broken promise. And that was a reliability change rather than a functional change or a usability change. It's just on the reliability front. So having done some pieces like that, I then got called into a project looking, because Heathrow's a regulated environment, working out what the strategic direction was going to be for the next 5-year regulated period, this quinquennium period. And having never really done strategy stuff in a big way before, I worked closely with some colleagues and some really good people in the kind of regulatory environment team, who I could inject this is the customer voice, this is what's important to the customer, and this is why it's important for our business. And they were injecting all of the regulatory, the economic, and the kind of the big grown-up finance stuff.
Yeah.
But that was a really fascinating period for me, and I kind of, we worked together to build out this big strategy that was looking at all the proposals, all the different projects, and picking and choosing what we felt was really, really important for us and for our customers and for the economic value of the business. And that proposal kind of got taken forward and accepted, and that was then the end of that piece of work. So I started looking for my next opportunity. And that's when I switched across to IAG Cargo, having always been on the passenger side, switching across to a completely new environment, a much more group perspective rather than that one single airline. And it's a B2B industry. It's a completely different customer base. It's a completely different product. It's a completely different everything. And went into that with not a lot of knowledge, but a lot of enthusiasm, and started building up that knowledge as quickly as possible. And that was a period of the business where it was going through transformation and a lot of people transformation. So as the head of strategy at the time, I started to build out, okay, well, here's the strategy of what's going on externally and economically, but also this is what we need to do on certain projects, around some of the people change things to move from being multiple different cargo organizations to a single coherent cargo platform. And again, a lot of that was to do with that was more focused on the economic realities, the external environment, the volatility that was going on. How would we respond? What did we need to do? Where were the opportunities? Where were the risks? How did we need to adjust the business slightly to maximize the opportunities and sort of ride out the risks? And then from there, one of the opportunities that was identified was maybe we should look at cross-border e-commerce. So I kind of put my old technology hat back on, got in touch with some of my old tech colleagues, and we built out a little proof of concept cross-border e-commerce delivery proposition that could reliably get a shipment that you bought on a website in the US to get to a consumer door in the UK with the customs all dealt with and everything kind of very, very simple. That was the vision and the goal. And we built this thing out. We did a bit of a proof of concept, and we delivered newspapers to all of the leadership team. So newspapers from Washington to the leadership team's front doors in the UK, because if it went wrong, it was a newspaper, and no one was going to cry over the lost money. But also, there's a date on a newspaper, so you can prove how fast it's got there. So that was kind of the proof point to let us go forward and build that out. And I spent a couple of years building out that platform into a little nascent company called Zenda. And it had really great reliability. It had really, really good functionality. I think the challenge that we faced on that project was the usability front and attracting customers onto that platform, because its scope was just one lane initially, and we planned to expand it out. So we were just sort of tackling those challenges when new opportunity came my way to look after the digital distribution for the whole of the IAG Cargo arm instead of just this one little piece. And so and that's where I've got to where I am today. So
bringing us smack bang up to date.
A bit of a wiggly path, but along that whole way, there's been opportunity to own things and focus on that kind of reliability, product capability, usability. That bringing those three things into balance has yielded great results.
I think I love wiggly paths. I think wiggly paths are great, and I think, bearing in mind what I do for a living, I'm speaking to people constantly about their careers and the path that they've taken from when they first went into work to where they are today in senior roles like yourself. And I don't think I've ever met anyone whose career path has been a straight one. I think everybody's path has got wiggles to a certain extent, and I think there's probably a strong case for saying the wigglier the better. What strikes me, Peter, from what you've just shared with us, is that you have constantly and consistently grabbed the opportunities when they have presented themselves. And you've said a few times there, when you've gone into a new role, or when you were presented with an opportunity for a new role, you've said, and I knew nothing about it. So I had not much knowledge, but lots of enthusiasm. And that really fascinates me, because there is this there's a theory in relation to, for a start off, the difference between men and women when we look at an opportunity, and men are more likely to look at it and say, well, I can do 2 out of the 10 things they want, so I'm going to chuck me out in the ring for that. Whereas females are much more likely to say, well, I can only do 8 of them, I need the other 2, so I'll not bother going for this one. What is it about you that's kind of put you in that position where you're saying, do you know what? I don't know anything about airports, but I'm just going to have a go because it looks interesting.
Well, on the airport one, it was almost it was a surprise to me. So it was literally somebody went on maternity leave, and I received their portfolio as a thumb drive and a new brief. So I think that probably helped me when I looked at future opportunities to go, okay, well, just because I don't have expert knowledge in that arena of the industry doesn't mean that the knowledge I bring from other parts of the industry isn't valid. And just because I haven't built business cases in this space, I've built business cases elsewhere. And, change and delivering change successfully is about how do we achieve the goal that we're setting out to do. There's always a vision and a goal, and whether you're the person setting the strategy or the person who's implementing a strategy, understanding that wider vision and goal, knowing where you fit into that, where your area of ownership or the job that you do fits into delivering that overall goal, it is the most important thing. And then once you've got that okay, I'm orientated to go in this direction, then you can start going, okay, what tools do I need? What knowledge do I need? What's around me? Who are the people around me who will bring knowledge and capability and a depth of experience that you might not have, but you can bring the skills that you bring. And then you've got a team, you've got a goal, you've got a direction, and off you go.
Yeah, this is it's one of the things that I really enjoy about your approach, is that you make it sound so simple, because actually it is. And we have a tendency, I think, to overcomplicate things. But when you articulate it as you've just done, it's well, as long as you know where you're going and you know what you need to get there, and what have you got in your team. I love this expression about the big grown-up finance stuff. That really resonates with me. It's like, yeah, I have a fantastic accountant who helps me with all of that stuff, whilst I can get on with the stuff that I know what I'm talking about, and using the strength of the team is really important, isn't it, as a leader?
Yeah, a leader in any team is not the team. The team is the team, and your role as a leader of a team is to set out the vision, articulate where you want to go and why it's important, and why people should care about it, be passionate about it, and commit to it, and set out that realistic roadmap that says, okay, this is where we are, this is where we want to go to, this is how we'll get there, or how I believe we'll get there. You recognize the challenges that are going to be faced, because it's easy to say the simple thing and then go, oh, but this is difficult and that's hard and we don't have enough of this, and all those things can be true, but they're just challenges that have to be overcome together, or risks that you have to articulate. And I've never implemented a strategy without a wiggle along the path that wasn't expected, but that doesn't mean that the end state and the end goal, even if the metrics that were originally set out aren't the end ones that you end up with, but you might end up with some similar ones, the direction is the right one. And as long as you believe in the direction, and the team believe in the direction and understand the importance of why you're doing this, then you've got a team that can deliver with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the other things that really resonated with me in your when you shared the example of the priority boarding experience, because I know certainly from colleagues that we work with in the rail industry that there can be a tendency to say, well, that isn't going to work because it's, it doesn't meet with that regulation, or yes, we've got health and safety issue, and what are the costs going to be to doing that. But that ability to influence, but I guess also to make people have a confidence that you're not going to take any risks that are unnecessary. You're not kind of going to put anybody at danger, or it's kind of let's just try this. Let's just try and see if it works. And then that whole example just fascinates me with its kind of reliance on human behaviour, and the fact that we like a signpost, don't we? We really like to be kind of directed as to, right, where do you go now?
Yeah, and I think safety and security are paramount in all transport. You can't do anything that would go against those, and that's drummed into every individual. But I think organisations that have built up and operated over a long period of time, sometimes things which get put in place as a process get put in place for a good reason, but that reason might not be valid anymore. Times have moved on. The reason for something being there is no longer necessarily true, or there might be a new way of solving it because we've got new tools. We're in, it's a new environment. There are new tools in our customers' pockets. Smartphones change everything.
Yeah.
And when we introduced the mobile phone boarding pass at BA, and I was, one of the first mobile phone boarding pass users on the first time we went through it, people were worrying, well, what if I drop a customer's phone, or what if ask the customers to scan it themselves. You can hold out the scanner if you want them to scan it, but quite often a customer will pass you their phone and you're not going to drop it because you're not going to drop it. And change takes time for everyone to adjust to. But there are new tools, there are new capabilities that exist, and they're continuing to evolve. And I think that the value of data that we now get from new technology tools is huge, and we can use that data to get a really better insight as to what's our customer thinking, where are they, what are they doing, how are they facing issues or overcoming issues, and what are the issues that we've got in the way we make offers or present things. So not an aviation story, but a transport one, a train one. I was getting a train into London for a meeting. The ticket machine wasn't working. Okay, fine, I'll download the app, and I'm on the train. That's fine, I'll download the app and I'll buy the ticket for my train, just like I would if there was a guard on the train who would walk past and I say, look, sorry, ticket machine's down, can I buy the ticket now? But I couldn't buy the ticket for a train that had already departed on the app. And I can see why people have designed it that way, but also they've forgotten that people sit on a train and go, oh, the ticket machine's not working, the train's here right now, I'm getting on it, and I want to have a valid ticket for when I arrive, and that's so that there's some stuff that can be done to look at why are people facing issues that they're doing, so analyzing the data that comes from when things don't work is so important in everything that I've ever touched or changed or made an improvement on. It's find out what's going wrong, how often, and why.
I think it's I think what you're saying to me is kind of taking me back to the previous point about your tendency, your history of saying, well, I don't know anything about that, but I've got this opportunity, I'm going to go for it, and therefore having what I've come to realize is this beginner's mind. And this kind of fear that I had early on in my career that, well, I can't go into that because I don't know enough about it. But actually, you don't know enough about it until you do it. But that fresh perspective and that ability to say, why are you doing it like that? Why is it set up like that? And there might be a really good reason, as you've just, in that example you've just shared with us, but having a different perspective and having that person as part of the team who can say, why is it like that? and kind of recognizing that actually technology and the pace of change is massive as well. And if you kind of, I go back to, going on holiday with my parents when I was much younger, and we'd be waiting for the tickets to arrive in the post. Yeah. And, it was always the last thing we did before we left the house was like, my dad would be like, right, passport, tickets, you have to remember it. And then to now where it's kind of literally everything's in the wallet on your phone.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, wow, how quickly we've moved. There's quite a few things that I think that you've said already, Peter, that I think may well come out in your answers to this next question. But what I'd really love to know is, looking at the transport industry, taking the experience that you have in the aviation world, but also kind of knowledge of beyond that. If you were going to be in charge, if you ruled the world in terms of the transport sector, what are the 3 things do you think that we should be focusing on as we move forward into this kind of what will become at some point the new normal, although that doesn't stay static for very long? What should we be looking at? What's going to help and what's going to make us improve?
I think there are some really great opportunities that have come out of the change through the pandemic that everybody's experienced. So there's new ways of working, and there's new ways of people planning their lives and organizing themselves. So the whole telecommuting thing, which was sort of seen as a bit of a backwater, is now mainstream. That's going to change the way that we work. That's going to change the way that we commute into the office and use office spaces. That's going to create new opportunities, because I think the other thing people have recognized is the value of face-to-face meeting in terms of creating new human capital, as opposed to maintaining human capital over a Teams call or a Zoom call or a normal voice call. Yeah. So people are valuing face-to-face time in a whole new way, and that's going to create new opportunities in terms of getting people together at the right times for the right things. And I think that's going to generate just a new customer mindset, which will create an opportunity in itself.
Yeah.
I think we're going to see a period of flux for a little while, where people have jumped straight back into cars and avoided some mass transport for a period of time. And I think the call back to mass transport is going to strengthen, both because we're going to get frustrated with the roads, and because the green agenda is no longer a side issue. It's central to everything that we're having to think about in what we do in our personal lives, in the way that we move, the way that we use energy. So I think that's going to create new opportunities. And yeah, I think if I had the magic powers of having the opportunity to do whatever I wanted, a period of stability would not go amiss for the transport industry. A stable regulatory environment, stable government restrictions globally would allow everyone to just plan and be stable. I don't think that's going to happen, though. And the one thing I do know about everybody who works in the transport industry is we're really good at responding to change. Yeah. We are, throughout the careers that everybody in the transport sector has, we've continually faced black swan moments that nobody expected, from the oil shocks to 9/11 to COVID and SARS and now what's going on in Eastern Europe. Yeah. We will respond to those challenges, focus on what we are here to do, which is connect people, connect businesses, and deliver a really great proposition that allows people to have those connections and grow their businesses and grow the economy and grow their time with their family. And so I don't think I'm going to be in charge, but I do of the world, but I do know that transport is going to respond to whatever challenge we have.
Yeah.
If I could influence some things, I think the people challenge in terms of attracting and retaining talent in transport is huge at the moment. I think the stumble into transport kind of piece isn't something that we can rely on to grow our teams forever. So making transport visibly and externally visibly exciting place to work is something that we should all be doing together.
Yes.
Because once you're in, you love it.
Yeah.
Because it's great.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. You're definitely you're kind of preaching to the converted here. So I've been working with the transport industry for 9 years. It was a conscious decision, but it was one made from a kind of common sense perspective. You know, if I'm going to set up my own business, I need to be focused on a sector that will always be there and will be kind of less susceptible to economic issues. You know, so coming into the transport sector for me was a conscious decision, but I had no idea how much I would love it. I absolutely would not want to work in any other industry sector. I think it's amazing. The passion of the people that work in this industry, fantastic. And what they do on a day-to-day basis. You said that, you know, put very simply, we're connecting people with opportunities, with work, with family, with friends, with leisure opportunities, all of this stuff, getting people from A to B. What I am constantly underwhelmed and disappointed with is how, as a sector, we need to get so much better at telling the outside world how great it is. It's like the best kept secret. It's like, don't tell anyone, but it's really good here.
Yeah, and the number of people I meet in my sector who are, you know, multi-generational in the sector. You know,
yeah,
granddad worked here, dad worked here, I work here.
Absolutely.
You know, not true for me, but so many people I know, and I know that that's true in the train sector as well. So I don't think we can just rely on existing blood. We need to bring in new talent. We need to make it the challenges and the opportunities and the vitality of this industry visibly attractive.
Yeah, and I think you make a really good point there, Peter, in relation to we can't rely on that kind of, well, granddad, dad, etc., because otherwise we're just going to get more of the same as well. And I think, you know, because it's very rare that somebody says to me, well, my great grandma and my grandma and my mum all worked on the railway. It does tend to be the male side of the family. And so on that basis, if we're going to have any impact in terms of attracting diverse talent into the railway, we need to work harder at that. And I have been described in the past as an evangelist for the rail industry, but, you know, other than putting my sandwich board on and walking down the high street, kind of come and join the rail industry. We need, and I'm really hoping that with the advent of Great British Railways and that kind of guiding mind for the industry, I am absolutely hoping and praying that somebody within the GBR team will actually say we need a campaign. We need a national campaign, a bit like the one, you know, where the young lad says, I was born in Blyth, but I was made in the Navy. Show us that, how exciting it is. Show us what the opportunities are. You don't need a boiler suit and a spanner and some oil on your face. That's not what the rail industry is all about. Yes, we've got amazing engineers who do all of the kind of the heavy lifting, but we've also got some incredible opportunities for people who are focused on strategy, on commercial, on customer, on data, all of this exciting new skills that we need for the future. I'm on my soapbox now, Peter. See, if you flick that switch and she's off. In terms of, I think for each and every one of us, as we go through our career, when we kind of reflect back, there will be times where somebody has been a role model. That might be because they've done something really positive and helped, or it might actually be the opposite in terms of, you know, fired you up to do something differently because they perhaps weren't as positive. Have you got someone in your career so far that you would say has been a role model for you in terms of how you operate?
I think that there are three people that come to mind through my career who have really helped me adjust my mindset and my perspective. So, you know, when I switched from being a technical person to the commercial side, I worked for a guy called Rob Pavlov, and he really helped me adjust my perspective and see the commercial side and how to structure a business case so that you can go, okay, this is why we should be making an investment so that we can have this outcome, and you know, understand that those outcomes have to be measurable. And build in measuring those outcomes into your promise to the business so that change can be made. He was really good at helping to teach me to change my mindset, but also giving me space to make mistakes as I ran around with not much knowledge and a lot of enthusiasm. Um, the next person who really helped me adjust my perspective was a guy called David Hart, who's an economist who I worked with on the strategy piece, and he really showed me how regulation works, how it fits inside an industry, how it's there to create certain protections which can be helpful but can also be restrictive, and kind of that further perspective, and that kind of widening of perspective that he really brought to me, as well as his ability to influence at the very most senior level. Seeing somebody who influences at that level was a great learning experience for me, and he just did it in a really calm but good-humoured manner, which was great and a good learning point for me. And then the third person, I worked for a lady called Sarah Coulson, who I know switched across to the cargo side, and again it was about reframing my perspective, moving from just the one part of one airline into that kind of group perspective, focusing on how do we do big long-term strategic change and get that into delivery mode was really, really important. So I think the three people who've made the biggest impact on my career are the people who've been at those kind of pivotal change moments and have helped me grow and learn and grasp the opportunities that were there in front of me.
I think that's a really good point in terms of giving you the space to make mistakes as well, because there's something there, isn't there, about working with someone who has enough confidence in you to know that you're not going to make a howling mistake, but there might be things that you're only going to learn how to not do that in the future if you get your fingers a little bit burnt at the beginning. So that space to make mistakes, I think, is critical and really great point.
Yeah, and fail safely. It was.
Yes, really great point. Thank you for that. I love that. I could talk to you for hours. I find you're really interesting, and I love your communication style, Peter, because you're so straightforward and easy to listen to, and everything just sounds so simple when you explain it. I love it. But unfortunately, I can't do that. So I'm going to bring our conversation to a close with one final question from me, which is, would you mind sharing with us a quote? So something that kind of is meaningful to you in terms of how you work, how you are inspired, or whatever works for you in terms of, leave us with a quote.
So I don't know if it's an inspirational quote but it's something that helps guide my approach, which is, if you can't measure it, you don't know you've done it.
Right.
And it's been really important and impactful in everything I've done. And to give a proof point to allow you to go further is to show, by doing this thing, we have made this change, which I can measure and I can prove. Now let me go further.
Right.
And then each time you can measure the change and the impact that you're having. And that gives you the permission to go further, the ability to go further, and the sense of achievement that you've actually delivered.
Yeah. And that really matters, doesn't it? That really matters. And I think that period of reflection, as you come to the end of a project, the end of a campaign, a piece of work, to look back and say, actually, these are the measures, this is what I've achieved, because we all need that sense of job satisfaction as well, don't we, to know that we've there's a lot of change needed, and sometimes it can feel quite a small thing, other times more significant, but ultimately measuring it so you know that you've achieved it is a real feel good factor for an individual.
Yeah.
Peter, thank you so much. I have thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. I am confident that our podcast audience will have lots of things of value out of the information that you've shared with us today. So my huge thanks.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been lovely to join you on the virtual sofa.
Very welcome. My huge thanks to Peter for sharing his thoughts and insights and his career story to date. I found that really interesting, and I hope you did too. Thank you for joining us. My huge thanks to Mark Fontaine for joining me on this episode of Intuitive Experts. There are so many questions that I have as a result of that conversation. I think we really have only scratched the surface. Please do get in touch with Mark if you'd like to know more.